When most people think of Alaska, they typically think of a frozen wasteland. They also think of polar bears, the cold, and igloos. Those factors may be true, but there are positive aspects to it as well. Alaska is like the biggest state in size, and also it is known as the last frontier and a land of opportunity. So most people migrate there from the lower 48 looking for jobs because work is easier to find. So today I'll be speaking about the benefits and reasons of living in Alaska, but more specifically the city of Anchorage. These three reasons being lower cost of living, recreational activities, and the permanent fund dividend check, which is called the PFD for short. So according to muni.org, the average home sales price for a home in Anchorage was $315,000 opposed to a single-family home in Los Angeles that was $550,000. So homes are cheaper in Anchorage, and they are pretty nice too. When my family used to live in Anchorage, we had a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, and 2-door garage. That was 3,000 square feet and was about $200,000. It was in a suburbia-type neighborhood, so it was pretty nice, well-developed and such. And the home we live in now is a 4-bedroom, 3.5-bathroom, and a 3-door garage house, 3,500 square feet, and was about $900,000. So the difference in the square feet is not that much larger, but the difference in cost is dramatically larger. Okay, and then the cost of living basically is how much it costs to access the basic necessities of life, so what you need to live, such as food, clothing, and shelter. The national average for the cost of living is set to 100, while New York is 218.8, Seattle, Washington is 121.5, and Anchorage is 126.6. So Anchorage the cost of living is a little above the national average, but you have to also put into consideration that things are harder to import up there, and like the property tax is lower too. Okay. So my next point, and there's also no sales tax. So if you were to go to a store and you see something on the shelf for $19.99 and then you give them a 20, you'll get your penny back. Opposed to different states where there's sales tax and they add it on, you have to pay that amount. My next point being, well, if you move to a new state, country, wherever, you're going to wonder what there is to do. And there are a lot of recreational activities in Anchorage, such as skiing, snowboarding, hiking, fishing, and snow machining. There are spots in Anchorage, but some of the better spots are outside of Anchorage. So in order to get there, it's only like a 30-minute to maybe 3-hour drive, depending on where you want to go. And also, if you don't want to travel, like if you don't like doing the outdoorsy type stuff, there are indoor activities such as there are shopping malls, there are bowling alleys, indoor water parks, things like that, and people go enjoy that. Or you can just stay home and stay on the computer. Yeah, and then Southern California residents, if they want to go to Big Bear to go skiing or snowboarding, that's like roughly a 6-hour drive to get there. And my last point, the permanent fund dividend check, the PFD, basically is a check that is sent by the state to each resident, and how it's distributed is they take the revenue of the oil companies in Alaska, and then they take a certain percentage of that, and then they divide it by the number of residents that live there, and then they distribute to each resident. To be eligible, you have to live in Alaska for 2 years, and after those 2 years, you can get that check and you get it yearly. And on muni.org, the PFD was $3,269 in 2008, so each resident got that check. And you can use it on anything. You can use it on bills, merchandise, or just you can save it if you want, because it's your money. You don't owe the state anything. So to conclude my speech, some may oppose to the cold and the darkness, but there is electricity out there, and there are heating systems, so you can keep warm, and you can, keep the lights on in your house. And so you can also engage in like fun activities, indoors or outdoors, and you can save money with the cheaper homes and save money with the PFD. Thank you.
But you didn't go to high school.
Okay.
My friend went to East Cambridge.
So, Oscar, what did you think?
I think it was a good speech, but what I saw now is that she looked ahead of us, and a little pause in the beginning. I like how she's personal experience that she used to live in Alaska and compared to her house in here in California. There weren't any much sources, and it was kind of like it wasn't like really fluent. It was kind of like a robot kind of way. And overall, she did pretty good.
All right. Well, I like the visualization that you have at the beginning to get our attention, and the goal of your speech is pretty clear. You set up a good structure. It could be more dramatic and more involving, but it was satisfying. The body of the speech, the main points that you talk about, they're all fine. There's good signposting inside, so we know where you are at any given point. I think you need to develop some of those points a little bit more. The home comparison, I thought, was one of the strongest arguments that you had, because you talked about it from personal experience. You mentioned your house in Anchorage and the house that you live in here and what was different, and of course the cost comparison. And I thought that was fine, and that really kind of led me to believe I was going to get a little bit more of that personal experience in the argument that you're presenting, especially when you get to the argument about living there and the things to do and that sort of thing. And it just felt a little like I'm getting the brochure version of Visiting Alaska instead of, really here's a resident who's enthusiastic about where they lived and really talking it up kind of thing. I mean, you mentioned the right kinds of things, but I'm not sure that any of them are particularly convincing, and they're certainly not emotionally involving, and I think that you lose a little bit of your persuasiveness as a consequence there. I did hear some statistical information in the presentation when you were talking about cost of living things, on the home prices, for instance, and on the general cost of living. I think you could explain that cost of living index a little bit more that you're talking about, where Alaska ends up pretty much right at the average, maybe slightly above, but in comparison to other places, particularly the place that we live, I think you could point out how much more manageable it would be. Plus, of course, if every resident is getting $3,200 a year, give or take, and you've got a family of 4, that's an extra $12,000 that you're adding onto your income. Gee, imagine if you were making a home payment, that would make half of your home payment for the year. How quickly could you pay off that $300,000 house, so on and so forth? I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can sell this a little bit more and make it a little bit more involving there. On your delivery, I thought that you needed to have a lot more variety in your voice, a little bit more energy. It seemed sometimes that you kind of ran out of energy during the presentation. I didn't think, maybe I didn't look enough, so you should watch the tape. There's an antiquated term nowadays. You should watch the video and see if you saw the same thing Oscar saw, that you're kind of looking above the audience instead of engaging people. It looked to me, every time I looked up, like you were actually looking at the audience, but I was not as focused on that as I was on some of the other things that were going on. And by the way, if it takes somebody 6 hours to get from here to Big Bear, you have taken the wrong road. Okay?